resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, hello, my Next Level friends. I am super happy to be here with you in this new episode of the Artist Next Level podcast. This is episode number 146, and I am super happy because today we have a great episode for you. Imagine what it would be like if the artists from the past, all the famous artists that you have read in the history books had access to Instagram. What would they say? What would they post? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today with my guest, Laurence de Valmy. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be a super awesome episode. Now, before I do that, before I introduce you to Laurence, I want to take this opportunity to really thank you, for listening to this podcast. Many of you have been listening since the beginning, 3 years ago, since I've been doing the Artist Next Level podcast on a weekly basis. Last year, I took a little bit of a break, maybe 3 months break. But other than that, the Artist Next Level podcast has been consistently in your iTunes library every week. And many of you, I know because I get your messages, you have been there from the beginning and you enjoy this podcast and you send me messages and you send me encouragement. And I just want to say thank you so much. I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you. I really, love being part of this community. And you make it possible. You make it real for me. And I want to just say thank you before I start, with my conversation with Laurence de Valmy today. I just want to say thank you. At the same time, my friends, many of you do not know that there are also many other resources that I create. For example, I have this show that's called Breakfast with Sergio, which I started exactly a year ago. I do that 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning, they go live on my Facebook page. And then they go on my Instagram. And then you can also watch them on LinkedIn. And you can listen to it as a podcast itself. And you can watch it in my YouTube channel. All you have to do is just go to Google and search for Breakfast with Sergio, and you can find it in all the different social media platforms. The one of your choice, you can follow it there. And my friend, I just want to say, if you have not heard one of my breakfast episodes, you are missing a lot of really great information because those are 10-minute quick in the morning while I eat my breakfast, quick episodes, to help you put your art career to the next level. And that's what they're about. I'm always looking for new topics. So if you have a topic that you would like me to share, to make into a breakfast episode, just let me know. I would love to hear from you. And also, if you have not done so yet, if you have not given a review to this podcast, please do so. It will make me so happy to hear from you. All you gotta do is just go to your iTunes and click on review for this podcast and write me a note. Would love to hear what you like, what are some of your favorite episodes, and just in general, how do you like this podcast? And thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time, you're in for a treat because my conversation with Laurence de Valmy is going to be awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about Laurence. Laurence is a French-born artist who lives and works in Philadelphia area. She studied art both in France and in the United States. At first, she pursued a career in business in parallel of her artwork and has been a full-time artist now since 2015. Her current work title, Post series, depicts fictional Instagram posts of the past of famous artists and invites us to reflect on the links between artists through times and the relationship between art and social media today. And I'm sure that many of you have seen her work in art fairs or in Instagram itself or in magazines or somewhere else. So I think you're going to have a great time listening to this podcast. Laurence de Valmy combines her knowledge in art history and her skill in painting to appropriate iconic artworks and share their stories. Each artwork, created with acrylic, is a clever juxtaposition of an original painting of an imagined conversation, historically accurate, yet humorous in many times. Her art has been shown in many group exhibitions and also in major international art fairs, which is the first time that I actually saw her work in person. This was back some years ago. I think it was during Miami Art Basel Week. In 2018, de Valmy's work was at the Museum of Urban and Contemporary Art in Munich in the exhibition The Bonte Art, showing alongside Andy Warhol. And my friends, I have such a pleasure to share with you my conversation with Laurence de Valmy. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you ready to take us to the next level?
I am. Let's go.
Let's do this together. So, Lauren, super happy to have you here in the show, in the podcast. It's pretty awesome that we started talking just briefly maybe a few weeks ago through LinkedIn, which is a platform that I don't know how much you use it, but it's one that I've been using for a while. But it's one of those that it's in the back of my head, and I forget to check my messages, and so we had probably been connected for a while, but really we didn't have a chance to communicate until kind of recently, and mostly because of my fault, because I keep forgetting to connect with people that I'm already connected with in LinkedIn. How much do you use LinkedIn?
Well, I do use it quite a lot, in fact, because I think it's not the same purpose than Instagram or Facebook, obviously, and it helped me reach out to sometimes some journalists or some curators, and also it's a great way to get the email contact of people. So yeah, I mix it with different platforms, and it's depending on the purpose.
Exactly, and you're totally right, because I just recently did a Breakfast with Sergio episode talking about LinkedIn, like kind of 5 strategies, and one of them is of course using it, as you said, to connect with people. So the audience is different, and the way you behave in each platform is important.
And sometimes you meet people, but you had a brief contact, so I don't feel necessarily comfortable to invite them on Facebook.
Exactly.
And maybe they're not on Facebook. So, depending on people, also I adapt. And sometimes I'm connected on the different platforms with, of course, people like you. I'm connected with you on Instagram, on Facebook, and also on LinkedIn.
Exactly. No, that's great. I think it's a great way to connect with the art industry in general. I've met so many, not only artists, but also curators or art professionals, sometimes work behind the scenes, like museum staff people, marketing people that work in museums and galleries, installers, and all those people that sometimes you don't see, but they're part of what we do.
Exactly.
And I think that is great. And the funny part of the story is that you had seen my some of my shows before in my podcast, and I actually had seen your work before. That really, the first time I saw it, I think I was trying to think before the podcast. I think it was in Miami during the art fairs.
Oh yeah, there, yeah.
And I think that's where first I saw it. And so there was kind of a mutual sort of connection, but we just never had a chance to actually have a conversation. So it's really great that social media allowed us to do that. Because I always say, social media, sometimes we feel like it's like this big monster, but it's actually, it's a great way to connect when you think about, when you're engaging on social media, you're not engaging with the machine, but you're engaging with the people that's on the other side, which in this case is you and me, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think these are tools, and humans always need to communicate with with other humans, and that's why we've been, since tools have been there, we've been looking for new tools to communicate faster and more easily. So this just answer to this need, and it's been great as an artist to be able to connect with other artists all around the world. And 20 years ago, when I was first trying, to look into art more seriously, it wasn't there. So it was much harder to create a community. I mean, it had to be a local community, and nowadays it can be an international one. So I like it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love it. So let's start, Laurence. First, before we talk a little bit about your story, let's tell our audience kind of what is your work about right now.
So, well, my work is a bit about social media, since I paint Instagrams of the past. So I started this series in the end of 2016, and before that, I was painting in the style of photorealism, let's say, and I was exploring different themes that I liked, and I like to work on reflections, and but I had not find my true something that was unique to me, and I was looking for that. So I was working into that, and often people would tell me, oh, your paintings looks like photos, and so I was like, maybe I was, of course, on Instagram and observing, all these profiles and how Instagram can become a medium in itself. And I was like, maybe I should, create paintings that look like an Instagram and play with the fact that my paintings looks like photo. So that was my first starting point. But then I wanted to share a story. And since I love art history, but mostly I love art stories, like the personal stories behind artworks. I came up with, it was just, I would not be able to tell you when exactly I got the idea. Sometimes it's when I fall asleep, and I'm kind of in a meditative almost stage, and I have ideas coming like this, and so I guess it was one of these nights.
One of those. Okay. And actually, I went back to your Instagram, and I went back in history, to see your earlier posts.
Yes.
And I found the one that was on February 28th of 2017, where your post said, "What if Instagram had always existed?"
Yes.
And then your following post is of course, the Campbell soup can by Andy Warhol, as that one was posted on February 28, 2017, and that the image is of the Campbell soup as an Instagram post from Andy Warhol, and with the date of October 6, 1961, right?
Yes.
So the idea of was that your very first one?
Yes, that was my second one, I think. But it's indeed, I made 3 kind of prototypes, and one was about Warhol, one was about Hockney, and the third one about Liechtenstein. And I was kind of looking into what I should do with that idea, and for this one, I took a photo of an actual Campbell soup, and I made a painting out of it. And I tell the story of how he came up with that idea of painting Campbell soup. And looking into his biographies, I learned that he pinpointed the idea thanks to Muriel Lateau, who was an art dealer, and she had a good sense, a good eye, and he valued her advice. And he was struggling into finding his brand. So he had started to paint the comics, and then Liechtenstein kind of came up with the same idea. So he knew he had to find something else. And she helped him, thinking about what he liked, about what he wanted to do. And she even asked him for $50 for her advice. So that was the theme behind the painting.
Got it. Wonderful. Another one of my, I'm just going through some of them, which I really love. And that's the cool thing, because I had seen your work before, and I thought it was a great idea, that I, until now I just knew who you were, as when we connected in LinkedIn. But you had one post, not post, but one of the paintings, which is from Claude Monet. And nice, you give him like almost 4,000 likes to his post. And Cézanne commented with a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So it's the interaction, the idea of the community of artists who live at a certain period in time. Again, it's not the isolation of the artist, but, you have here Monet, posting this series of scenes from the outside cathedral, and then Cézanne kind of also engaging with him, giving him a thumbs up, and Pissarro saying sublime ensemble. So is this whole play of not only the image but also the community over the artists
Exactly.
of the time. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that.
That's what I wanted to show, like the connections between artists at the same period of time. And yeah, they were friends. So for some, I have a lot of material because we have a lot of letters and biographies. For some others, it's sometimes a little bit not as documented, but it's great, and it's very moving to read about them, their struggles and their passions. So that's what I'm trying to share.
Great. And for example, Vincent van Gogh, his pictures only get like 65 likes.
Yeah, so I try to adapt. So, for example, Claude Monet, when he painted the cathedral, he was already a star in the art
Yeah.
world, and he sold paintings in America, and so he was very well known. Whereas Van Gogh, even though he was connected with some people, he was probably not as he was obviously not as famous. So that's why he had
popular.
less likes.
So he will have less followers on his Instagram than
Yes.
some of the other guys. Exactly. And I think, this is something that brings that whole conversation of, how Instagram has changed our lives as artists, right? How Instagram and not only Instagram, but the whole social media. And I think now Instagram, because it's just so immediate and it's just such a platform that's so fitting for visual art, how it's changed our lives too. We could not imagine nowadays, our lives without it as a platform in which artists we can function and work. But it hasn't been here for too long. It's just been a few years that this platform has been around, and how much it has changed the way we work, the way we talk, the way we share, the way we interact with the world and with one another as artists.
Yeah, so that's exactly also because my main goal is to share stories behind the artworks, but my other goal is also to make people reflect on the place of social media and on the relativity of fame at one point in time. Like you had, for example, Van Gogh, who was not that connected and not that famous. And look where he is now. Whereas you had some artists who made a very good living, but that nobody really knows about nowadays. So maybe they would have had a lot of likes and a lot of followers because they were like more maybe commercial artists, or I don't know if it's the right label, but so it makes you think when you read about the critics at one point in time, and then a few years later, sometime the opinions have changed. So that's
Right.
I wanted to share, and also to make people renew their interest into a piece of art that they've seen many times, maybe sometimes too much, but that they don't know much about. Like for me, it's moving to know that Van Gogh painted his famous almond blossom tree as a gift for his nephew, and it moves. It's not only a tree, and it's not only spring. It becomes the symbol of a birth, and his nephew was named Vincent after him. So it gives another depth and doesn't change the aesthetic of the painting, but I like the story behind.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. I love I love all the history of the artist, the history of the medium, bring the interaction and the stories that you are telling through this as well. I think they're really wonderful. And not only you've been doing all masters, but also some more contemporaries like Jasper Johns.
Yes.
Right. If he had an Instagram too, for example, and Rauschenberg is commenting on his flag paintings. So you're also bringing a little bit closer.
Yeah,
to
even
time.
closer to us than that, because I decided that my limit is the creation of Instagram.
Okay.
And it was created 8 years ago. So until 2010, I can, enjoy and imagine and share stories that could not have been shared before because Instagram was not there. So I think the most recent I've done were made in the 80s. So I made a Richard Prince.
Okay.
And I enjoyed playing with the fact that he also used Instagram as a subject. And
I see.
his series was very different because it's photographs of photograph, and he kind of had a critical look on selfies and this culture of selfies. So his series, but before that, he had this famous cowboy series. So I made an Instagram about his photos of cowboys.
Got it. And closer to home, Chicago, I found one from Kerry James Marshall,
Yes.
right from his show in 1988 at
Yes.
the Renaissance Society here in Chicago. So, as you know, if he had Instagram then, this we're having a likely post of some sort.
Yes.
So you're also playing then with appropriation, right?
I do.
Appropriation of art from old masters to to more contemporary. Um, how does that work in terms of an artist you working with other artists' works in terms of the legalities and things like that? Because I'm sure many artists will have that question.
Yeah. So it's under the fair use in what is considered fair use in art. So appropriation has to be the using a piece of work in a new context. So you give it a new meaning. What you cannot do is copy someone and put your name under it and say that's yours. But here, what I do is I present the artwork that I appropriate and I put it in a new context, giving the story behind. So that's what is considered fair use. And that's what made Warhol said that art is what you can get away with. And it was in that context that he could also appropriate stuff. But as long as you transform it and you give it a new meaning, you're good to go.
You're good to go. That's right. And now, how big are these paintings? Are they all kind of same size as you create each one, or do they vary? In terms of your format.
So I use different sizes. I started with. So when I started my series, I started with a size of 40 by 30 inch, and I did quite a lot of them. What really helped me start is that I presented my project to an artist residency based in Mana Contemporary.
Okay.
And I was granted the residency, and I had 3 time to create artwork and to come up with a body of work that I could present to galleries, and so that was great. And from then I was exhibited, and I started to also with the galleries I was working with, started to ask me, oh, would you be able to do smaller sizes or bigger sizes? And depending on the subject, so it goes from 14 by 11 inches to 60 by 40 inches. So
quite a range. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I see now on Instagram. I saw a post where I can see a couple of the sizes. Okay. And what has been the response from the public to your work?
It's a great response, and it's very nice to interact with the people who look at my work, because I usually see them smile, and then it starts a conversation about what's behind. Sometimes people assume or do not realize that everything that I put in the comments are fact-based. I do not invent anything. I dig into the biographies, the quotes, the interviews to write the dialogues that are below the painted image. So it makes people, question about the story. And I have different type of people interested into my work. Some who are very knowledgeable about art history and who will immediately see my references and know what I'm talking about, and some who are interested into art history but may not know so much, and who are interested in knowing more.
And I also see, huge potential here for educational purposes in terms of, schools using kind of like your art as a way to educate, their students, who are always in social media
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
So you have the visual, you have the pose, you have, the historical background, you got the dates. So, what a great way also for, younger artists or our students, to take a look at these works in a way that is become meaningful to them now, and a way that also becomes memorable, because I think that's what you are doing too, creating bringing these works in a memorable way for all of us who went to art school or study art or been reading about art. We can read into the stories, we know these artists, we know some of their background, so it makes sense. But also for someone who comes in at the very first time, who maybe just has heard the word Warhol but doesn't know much about it, then this kind of creates a step of interest of maybe digging further and looking more into the artist's life.
Yeah, well, it's one aspect of my work that I enjoy is to interact and to share with the people who look at it, and it's a great starting point for conversation. And if some people can go back with oh, I'd like to know more about it, it's great.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And Lauren, I wanted to ask you really quickly, how did you become an artist?
So I think I never really became an artist. I started like I like to draw, I like to paint. When I was a kid, my mom is very into arts herself, so I had everything at hand, and she took me to tons of museum exhibitions. So I think it opened my interest and it fed my interest into that. Then I arrived at, when I needed to pick a path, I decided to go for something that seemed more secure, and I did a master in economics and marketing. So I had a first career in that field, and I was painting in parallel and having my passion on the side. And then when I moved to the USA 5 years ago, I quit my job and I had more time and more space. So I went back to it with more intensity. And I really decided to be full-time on this 3 years ago. So it's been a process.
Awesome. And in your case as an artist yourself, what has been the role of social media for you as an artist?
Oh, it's been huge, because when I decided to be full-time, I was thinking about it. I went on Google and I typed how to become an artist.
Yeah.
Because I was painting, but I knew it was different from making a living from that. And right. I started to connect on Facebook. I wasn't at all on social media before. And I started to connect with artists, and I met some people who were generous with their time, and that's how little by little I started. And when I showed one of these artists introduced me to my artist residency, which was very crucial for me, especially since I do not have an academical really diploma of art, and I had the opportunity to study art, but I do not have all the connections that I could have had if I had done I guess an MFA or and so I was spotted on Instagram by different art dealers and regularly by collectors. So yeah, it's been great to connect with people and also to build my career.
Wow, that's wonderful. So not only has inspired your art, but also has been a tool for your own art, your own art career to get ahead, and that's wonderful. I think that is great. Thank you for sharing that. And Lauren, I wanted to ask you too. As we start kind of getting close to wrap up the program today,
Sure.
a question that for many artists is one of the biggest challenges. As I talk to so many artists, and
Mm-hmm.
also doing my show, and the questions that I get is like, how do I find my own voice? How do I find that thing that people can recognize me for? If I'm whatever, looking, searching. What could you tell to an artist who's right now in search for his or her own voice as an artist? You found it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? How that will evolve over time,
Yeah.
and that's yet to see, and we all evolve and change. But that first kind of a moment where you say, I think I grasp into something that I can call of my own, and then build upon that. What would you say to somebody, an artist who's right now in that search?
Well, so depending on each person, I think what helped me for me was to study art history, and I think that having the knowledge of art history is helpful into positioning your body of work, but that might not work for some people who want to be, free and not have any references. But I think it's useful to know what. So I see art history as a continuity, like we kind of build upon what people have done before us, and Warhol could do what he did because other artists ahead of him, like Duchamp and his fountain, made, paved the way for him and others to have pop art. So that's why I think, you live at one moment in time and you have to do something that is also meaningful to the people who are around you at that time. But it is a complex question because it has to be true to yourself and unique. So I've been struggling with that question for quite a while before finding this theme. And as you said, who knows how I will move on and get new ideas.
Right. And sometimes it happens that, especially now, because we have the internet and accessibility to each other so fast and so quickly, that sometimes you may find something that you think nobody has ever done. Then you go, and then 3 months later, like, you see that other people actually have done something similar, right? It's like, oh snap! It's like, I don't know, like when you go and buy a car and you see this car at the dealer that you like, and you buy it, and now all of a sudden you see it everywhere. Like, oh shoot, I thought I was the only one in my neighborhood.
Yes.
Now everybody has one, right?
Yes. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be like you're the only person on the face of the earth to do what you do, because it could be hard to expect that. It has to be true to what you are and who you are. Then the thing is, can you make a living out of it? That's the other question. Like, you can create a body of work that is amazing and unique and truly yours, but it's hard to sell. So you have to see, what you're looking into. Are you looking for achieving yourself as a creating person? Are you looking into artistic recognition? Are you looking into a commercial recognition? And probably the answers will not be the same. So
exactly. Yep, you are totally right, Lauren. I think you're giving us some great advice there. Most important, be true to yourself, because if you are in the lookout, you have to look inward first. You have to look inside, and what calls you, what moves you, and work towards that, and then find your place in the world. I think will come naturally after, as you have done as well. And our history, as you said, it's not a thing of the past. Our history is being made every day.
Yeah.
Yesterday is part of our history, right? And
totally.
So that is all important, and we can all play a role today, which is wonderful. So Lauren, you've been pretty awesome. Thank you so much for being in the podcast. And I know there's a lot of our friends here in the podcast who are saying, I would love to follow Lauren. I would like to see what you guys are talking about. So why don't you share where are you at on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you may be at, please share that out, as well as your website.
Yes, I'm obviously on Instagram, and it's simply my first name, Laurence, and my last name, de Valmy, and everything is under the same.
Can you spell your last name, please, so that I can find you?
Last name is Devalmy.
Awesome. And how about on what are you else?
On
what
Facebook, else? LinkedIn, and Twitter is the one. I mean, I'm there, but I don't use it much.
Okay.
It's not my favorite.
It's not all right. And your website?
And it's Laurence de Valmy, same.com.
Same. Awesome. Easy. You can find you everywhere under the same name. That's wonderful.
Yes.
That's right. Well, thank you, Lauren, for that. Sharing your story, sharing, your work with us. We look forward to seeing more of that in the future. I look forward to next art fair where I see one of these and okay, I know Lauren. I talked to Lauren over the podcast, and that would be pretty awesome. And I'll take a selfie probably in front of that and I'll link to this episode so that we can use, and I'll use the right hashtags and do all the right things so that more people get to see it.
Next step is that we can meet in real life.
That's right. Let me know when you're in Chicago. I'll of course, I'll see where you're going to be next, and hopefully we can meet at some point as well. So thank you, Laurence, and I want to thank all our friends for listening to this podcast. Please share it with your friends, and if you have a couple minutes extra, also go to iTunes and give us a review how you like the episodes. If you have also some suggestions of what you would like to hear or artists that you would like to propose, please also share that with us. We'd love to hear from you as well. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.
You.
And I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.